I brought in the issues of like jinns and black magic, and she said she had heard of it, but I came away from the training thinking that on the one hand the training was good, but I still felt there's so much that happens in our communities that wasn't covered. And so in terms of what causes mental health or the things that people think about, as I was saying earlier, in terms of racism, in terms of the spiritual side. So I was speaking to somebody yesterday in terms of within the Muslim faith, there's the belief in jinns and black magic. And again, what we find is that overall professionals don't understand that concept. And so communities are going through lots of impact on their mental health, but they won't share that with professionals. And I suppose my advice again is for professionals to understand what are all the lived experiences and understandings and knowledge that each different community has. So, for example, I'm using the words jinns and black magic, which are particular to the Muslim community, but I know that within the African community we have witchcraft, and some of those concepts are very, very similar. And I know that, for example, there's been a number of deaths of young children from the African background. So there have been a number of inquiries, and there are some safeguarding policies now that different councils have got in place around witchcraft. But in terms of the black magic and the jinns issue, some professionals that you talk to, for example in Bradford, because they work with larger numbers of Muslim communities, they're aware of those. But we were talking, it was only yesterday, about the need to get some of that voice. So we've had women who have been abused by faith healers. And because
that's one of the biggest issues in Pakistan, by the way.
Well, that's also here as well. We've had a couple of women who've been murdered, and there've been faith healers involved, but because the family wanted to protect them, when it's been looked at what's caused the death, those people have been protected. And so and just how that can play out in terms of the impact on a person's mental health.
So I can share one of my own experience regarding that. My father is schizophrenic. And he was diagnosed schizophrenia after 17 years of suffering from that. And that was because my family thought that he has been possessed by some jinn. Because you know, when you're schizophrenic, you try to you have some own stories. Like he thinks that he was dead, and then he came back to life again. And sometimes he's crying, sometimes he's laughing, sometimes he's talking to someone, but there's nobody there. Sometimes he has his own assumptions, and he tells that somebody speaks in his ear, tells them that this person is the enemy. So I remember there was one more time when he was very against my mother, and he said that somebody tells me in my ear that you are someone from the raw, and I need to kill you. So something like that. So my family was thinking that probably he's possessed, because my father used to go for hunting and would stay in the jungle for long days. So people have these assumptions that if you go to these kind of areas, you get possessed. But it was for when everything, now he's in a very bad state, because he wasn't diagnosed for such a long period, and they would take him to all these people who the faith healers. So his health is
so
even more worse
again
now.
If professionals understood that there was this other way of thinking, they would be able to ask those questions. And it's also about the reinforcing the messages to the families that please make sure that you take your, whoever it is, person to get a medical diagnosis alongside whatever belief you have. Whereas if the professionals aren't aware of it, they're not going to ask those questions.
And I think that the GPs and the doctors here in UK, they must know that these are also the problems that exist within our community, and should be aware of all of these things. Yeah. That's very important, especially with the mental health ones.
Yeah.